السلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Last time we had started our discussion on a few ḥadith. See where we leave off. The hadith of Ibn Maryam, right? So the hadith of Isa ibn Maryam, where the Prophet ﷺ, he says that he will descend and he will be a just ruler amongst you. So he ﷺ asked, what will you do when the son of Mary descends amongst you? And we said that at that time, the Mahdi will already be present. And when in the presence of the Mahdi, will the leadership then pass to Isa alayhi salam? Right, after the Mahdi passes, then Isa alayhi salam will lead Ummah. And so he was asked, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, with what will he lead? How will Isa alayhi salam lead? I think the mic is on. The other one? Yeah. Right? Can we? Is the other mic on? You're playing with it? So the Prophet ﷺ, he asked, well, what will he lead with? So the people asked, they said, okay, he's going to come down. What will he lead with? And there's a reason that they asked that question. I also want to talk about one of the narrators, an interesting story.
Is it because during his time he will become a Muslim just?
Okay, he'll be just. Yes, we had spoken about the hadith. So I guess the question is, why did the companions ask that? Why did they ask that question specifically? So the Prophet ﷺ said, Isa is going to come down. What will he? And then the companions were like, oh, he's going to come back. What is he going to lead with? Using what? He's going to use the Quran and the Sunnah. Meaning that he, alayhi salatu wasalam, is going to follow the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He will not follow his Sharia. So that's why they asked. One of the narrators who I actually wanted to spend a little bit of time on and talked about is Ibn Abi Dhi'b. Ibn Abi Dhi'b was a contemporary of Imam Malik. Is there a buzz? Or that's just me? Okay. There is, right? What can I say? Anyway, so Ibn Abi Dhi'b, he was a contemporary of Imam Malik, and it's actually a really interesting discussion, and it's something that's related to this in terms of leadership, is that during that time, Imam Malik, he used to accept the gifts of the Sultan, right? So he used to accept the gifts of the governor during the time. Ibn Abi Dhi'b, he used to reject the gifts. He used to reject the gifts of the Sultan and the governor. Why do you think that was? And why did Imam Malik accept them? So, if a congressman sends me a fruit basket, why would they send me a fruit basket? Or, I'm sorry? Because they want something from me. Okay? I'll use another example. There's a company that works here. They provide a service in Virginia, and they send me sweets every year.
Like appreciation for your business.
Right. It can be a great appreciation for my business, or if they're sending it to me specifically, why are they sending it to me?
On giving us the business.
Right. It could be either for referrals, right? That's number one, or they want my stamp of approval on the business that they're doing. So over here, when we talk about the politicians sending gifts, right? This is an issue that historically the clergy always had problem with. They would say, "La taqbal hadaya sultan," like don't accept gifts from the politicians. And why is that? Why would they refuse? These are gifts, right? This is not nothing else. It's not a stipend. It's not saying, it's not a job. So as someone, like, they would stay away from jobs with the leadership. Why would they stay away from jobs with the
If
leadership?
I'm not mistaken, back then,
I'm sorry?
the scholars had a big say in a lot of the followers.
Right, so,
They had
people listen to scholars, there's no doubt about that, but how come I couldn't become an official da'i or sheikh for the governorship? Conflict of interest. What conflict of interest would there be? Right, so if the governor wants something, or he needs something, and all of a sudden he has a scholar now in his pocket, that will help him what?
Navigate towards his.
Right, it'll help him justify whatever it is that he does. And this is why the ulama and the clergy, what they used to do, they actually used to stay away and avoid appointed positions in the government out of fear of this. They didn't want their rulings to become skewed. And by working outside of that sphere, it allowed them to operate very independently. And that's something like independence is something that they really prided themselves in. So the other question is, all right, well, that makes sense in terms of appointments and positions. What about in terms of gifts? Why is that a problem? I'm sorry? Like scratch my back, scratch yours type. Hey, I looked out for you, right? Remember, like I sent you this gift or I sent you this money, and now you're making fatwa against me,
Yeah, it's just like,
right?
yeah, it's just like my dad used to say, if you keep on receiving favor from someone, you'll not be able to tell them the truth. when you
Yes.
get to the point.
Right? Absolutely, that's 100% correct. Saying that, this is, Imam Malik used to accept gifts from the Sultan. We established that. And we said Ibn Abi Dhib, he actually used to refuse them. Then there became an issue of talaq bil jabr. And some of you might be familiar with this. Basically, the government, they wanted the ruling class or the scholars to say that if a person is forced to divorce his wife, then that divorce counts. Imam Malik, what did he say? He said, no, absolutely not. Ibn Abi Dhib, what do you think he said? He said, absolutely not. Of the two, do you know which one was punished? Imam Malik was punished. Why? He was punished by the government. You guys, you know what they did to him? Basically, they put him on a mule, sitting backwards. They shaved his beard, and they made the mule parade all around Medina. And while the mule was parading around Medina, Imam Malik said, "Let the people know that I am Malik ibn Anas." So I tell everyone that this is Malik ibn Anas, and I say that anyone who who says that a forced divorce counts as a divorce is wrong. And I always thought this was like interesting, it's an interesting case study on how the relationships develop between different groups of people, and how historically, like even until today, there's always a struggle between the political class and the clergy class. Saying that, even though Imam Malik accepted, did it change his fatwa? No, right? He stood by his principles. Like, just because a person accepts those gifts, it doesn't mean that a person cannot be principled. But saying that, many times when we view or deal with different issues, or when we look at different scholars, one of the major criticisms that happens is if, for example, the government makes a decision to help in a place or to not help or to change certain laws, and then there are scholars who are like, yeah, that's right. What is the immediate thought that comes to our minds and our hearts? Huh? That we're like, man, they're corrupt, they're sellouts. And it's a very natural, have you guys ever heard the term scholars for dollars? Yeah. Right? So and this is why, right? They sell out. What do they sell out? They sell out their religion. And this is something that we even experience today, right? It's not something that's strange. And how people draw their alliances and create their alliances, it's something that becomes pretty clear, and people are actually observant of this, and people actually see it. And it causes that scholar to lose their credibility. So I just wanted to share that story. I thought it would be appropriate and interesting, especially since we're talking about leadership. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى قال حدثنا الوليد بن الشجاع وهارون بن عبد الله وحجاج بن شاعر قالوا حدثنا حجاج وهو ابن محمد عن ابن جريج قال أخبرني أبو الزبير أنه سمع جابر بن عبد الله يقول. So over here you have a narration from Jabir ibn Abdullah, who he said that I heard the Messenger of Allah سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول, the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم say لا تزال طائفة من أمتي يقاتلون على الحق ظاهرين إلى يوم القيامة. So he said that there will continue to be a group of people who are upon the truth, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make them apparent in the ummah until Yawm al-Qiyamah. قال فينزل عيسى ibn Maryam, until Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam descends, فيقول أميرهم, and their leader will say to Isa, right? So the leader of this group, he will say to Isa, تعال صلي لنا. He says, come and pray with us. Come and pray with us. فيقول لا صلي لنا, يعني pray for us, يعني meaning come and lead the prayer. فيقول لا. So Isa ibn Maryam, he will respond and he will say, no. إن بعضكم على بعض أمراء. He says that from some of you, or from you, are those, some of which who are leaders. تكريمة الله هذه الأمة, and this is in honor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this ummah. So what does he mean by that? He says that some from amongst you are leaders, and meaning that you have political position, and this is done, like I'm not leading out of the honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this ummah. What does he mean by that? So this is Isa alayhi salam speaking. Sure. So again, the situation, just to be clear, Isa alayhi salam, he will come. And he will come to the leader of the Muslims at the time, and the leader will then say to Isa what? He said, lead us in prayer. And Isa will say, no. He said, I'm not going to lead you because from amongst you there are already leaders in place. And he said, I'm doing this because of the honor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this ummah. What does he mean by that? That even he, alayhi salam, is what? He follows the Sharia, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he wanted to show the people the honor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given ummah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and that he did not come to lead them, he came to be a leader, right? He didn't come to lead them specifically, but he did come to lead. And the reason that he will continue allowing them to lead is because this is an honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed on the ummah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. قال حدثنا يحيى بن أيوب وقتيبة بن سعيد وعلي بن حجر قالوا حدثنا إسماعيل يعنون ابن جعفر عن العلاء وهو ابن عبد الرحمن عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة. So over here Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه, he narrates أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا تقوم الساعة حتى تطلع الشمس من مغربها. So over here the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, as is narrated by Abu Hurairah, that the hour will not be established until the sun sets, the sun rises from its place of setting. Where does the sun rise? I always forget. Is it east or west? Where does it rise? It rises in the east? East to west?
Yeah, east to west.
Yes, you guys sure about that?
No, east to west.
East to west? Alright, close. So I'm trusting you on this.
East to west.
So over here he's saying that if it rises in the east, then the hour, what will happen?
Or the signs of the...
Yeah, from the signs of that, he says the hour will not happen and not be established until the sun rises from
the opposite.
From the opposite, which is, according to all of you, the west. It is, it's right? Okay. Alhamdulillah. فإذا طلعت من مغربها آمن الناس كلهم أجمعون فيومئذ. So over here, so whenever the sun rises from the east, then the people are safe. So this is the Prophet speaking. So whenever it rises from the east, the people are safe. فيومئذ لا ينفع نفسا إيمانهم لم تكن آمنت من قبل أو كسبت في إيمانها خيرا. So over here is that on that day, that it will not benefit a person who has not believed before that moment. And those that did, then for them there is khayr. So over here in this hadith, what is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam telling us? He's telling us that
Going up to that point, after that point, it's not going to matter.
right at this point there's no benefit in your belief. Why? And what other situation does this apply? So meaning that if a person sees the sun rise from the west, and they're like, oh, okay, I believe now. It's like, yeah, you Muslims are right, huh? Yeah, or at the time of death, like sakratul maut. So at the moment that the soul is being taken from the body, at that time also, the tawbah is not accepted, right? At that time, the tawbah is not accepted because now they have reached a point of yaqeen, right? They've reached a point of absolute belief, right? There's certainty at that point. The next hadith قال حدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة وابن نمير وأبو كريب قالوا حدثنا ابن فضيل وتحويل الإسناد وحدثني زهير بن حرب قال حدثنا جرير كلاهما أن عمارة ابن القعقاع عن أبي زرعة عن أبي هريرة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا حسين بن علي عن زائدة عن عبد الله بن ذكوان عن عبد الرحمن الأعرج عن أبي هريرة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وتحويل الإسناد قال وحدثنا محمد بن رافع قال حدثنا عبد الرزاق قال حدثنا معمر بن حمام ابن منبه عن ابي هريره عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بمثل حديث العلاء عن ابيه عن ابي هريره عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So again, he brings 1, 2, 3 different chains here to fortify and give credence to the previous hadith. قال وحدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة وزهير بن حرب قال حدثنا وكيع وتحويل الإسناد وحدثني زهير بن حرب قال حدثنا إسحاق بن يوسف الأزرق جميعا عن فضيل بن غزوان وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنا أبو كريب محمد بن العلاء ولفظ له قال حدثنا ابن فضيل عن أبيه عن أبي حازم عن أبي هريرة قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So over here Abu Hazim, he narrates that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said ثلاثة إذا خرجنا لا ينفع نفسا إيمانهم لم تكن آمنت من قبل أو كسبت في إيمانهم خيرا. So over here, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that there are 3 situations. That when 3 things appear, faith will not benefit one who has not previously believed or has derived no good from his faith. And he mentions طلوع الشمس من مغربها, the rising of the sun from the west, والدجال, and the appearance of the Dajjal, والدابة الأرض, and the beast. What is the beast? What is he talking about?
It's a beast who actually speaks.
Right, so it's a beast that where is it going to come from?
You can't tell what's the front and the back.
Right, so it comes from the earth, right? So it rises from the earth, it can speak, right? So all of these things, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, once you experience these 3, if you experience one of these 3, then at that point, Tawbah is not to be accepted. Why? And if we look at all these things, like, are there other signs the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has given us for the hour?
Those are major signs.
Right, so there are some major signs, for sure.
These are major signs.
Right, these are major signs, right? These are signs that once you see them, that Tawbah is not accepted. Why is that?
Because it's
right now it's like super apparent, right? It's not like, oh, maybe this is that, or maybe this is what it tends. Like, these are things that are completely abnormal, right? These are things that are completely out of the ordinary, and there's no way to be like, okay, well, no, right? There's no explanation for any of these things. Like, do animals speak? No, right? You have this giant beast that's speaking, right? This is strange, out of the normal. Dajjal, he comes, he turns the desert into a rainforest, he turns rainforests into deserts, he's bringing the dead to life, right? He's killing people. This is abnormal, yes? And the last one, the rising of the sun, obviously, that is the last strange thing. قال حدثنا يحيى بن أيوب قال إسحاق بن إبراهيم جميعا عن ابن علي قالوا ابن أيوب قال حدثنا ابن علي قال حدثنا يونس بن إبراهيم ابن يزيد التيمي سمعه فيما أعلم عن أبيه عن أبي ذر عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال يوما. So over here Abu Dhar, he mentions that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said one day, أتدرون أين تذهب هذه الشمس? He says, do you know that where the sun goes? قالوا الله ورسوله أعلم, that Allah and His Messenger know best. قال إن هذه تجري حتى تنتهي إلى مستقرها تحت العرش. So it says that the sun continues on its path until it goes underneath the arsh, or the throne of Allah. فتخر ساجدة, so and it stays there and it goes into sajda, it falls into prostration. فلا تزال كذلك حتى يقال لها ارتفعي. So it stays in that position until it is told to rise. ارجعي من حيث جئت, that go back to where you came from, meaning rise and continue on this journey. فترجع, so it goes back. فتصبح طالعة من مطلعها, so it rises from the east. ثم تجري حتى تنتهي إلى مستقرها تحت العرش, and then it continues this way until again it comes under the arsh, under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's throne. فتخر ساجدة, so it then prostrates. ولا تزال كذلك حتى يقال لها ارتفعي, so it stays in that position until it is said that rise. ارجعي من حيث جئت, and it return back to where you came. فترجع, so it goes back. فتصبح طالعة من مطلعها, so it rises from where it goes to its place of rising and it rises. ثم تجري لا يستنكر الناس منها شيئا حتى تنتهي إلى مستقرها ذلك. So over here, the people, they become accustomed to this, right? They become accustomed to the rising and the setting of the sun تحت العرش, and مستقرها ذلك تحت العرش, until it goes back and it falls into the cycle and this pattern again until it returns back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's throne. فيقال لها ارتفعي أصبحي طالعة من مغربك. It says rise, but rise from the west. فتصبح طالعة من مغربها, so then it will rise from the west. فقال رسول الله, so the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, أتدرون متى ذاك? He says, do you know when that's going to happen? ذاك حين, and this is going to be when لا ينفع نفسا إيمانهم لم تكن آمنت من قبل أو كسبت في إيمانها خيرا. So over here he ends by saying, reciting the verse that no one will benefit who has not previously believed or who has derived no good from their faith. So this entire hadith, are we to take it on its apparent understanding? I'm sorry? I would believe so, right? So because is it the way we know the earth now? Is it possible to know where the sun is? Like, is it always a place where there's sunlight, right? And is always a place where it's going to be night, right? It's actually easy to follow that. Even the hadith, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He descends the last third of the night. So is there not always somewhere on earth where it's the last third? Right, so there are certain things that are very metaphorical, and it's important to understand things like that. Like, because physically, this doesn't apply, and it doesn't make sense to us. So there is a metaphor here, and what is the metaphor? What can we understand from this? You can't hear me? Oh, okay. Let me turn it off. Yeah, okay.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله. It was you. Allah yahdik. I don't know. Something's going on with the sound system, but khair. And there's a buzz here too. Huh? No, it's not. There's a buzz in one of these speakers. But khair. Right? Yeah. Like, so over here, this now introduces us something to I don't want to say a dilemma, but a new way of looking at some of the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, he sometimes spoke in what? In metaphors. So now, how do we determine what we can understand metaphorically and what we should understand actually and physically? Yes. Mm-hmm. Sure, but I'm saying, all right, well, when I'm dealing with prophetic hadith, now that we know that the Prophet ﷺ speaks in metaphors, how do I know when it applies and when it doesn't? Do you understand the question? How do I differentiate? If someone said to me, the Prophet ﷺ, I'm sorry?
Obviously by the context.
Okay, context helps, but what if somebody goes to you like, oh yeah, the hadith Jibreel where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, or the hadith ibn Umar where the Prophet ﷺ said, Bunya al-Islam ala khams. Right, so Islam was founded or based on 5. Shahada la ilaha illallah, wa iqam salah, wa ita zakat. Someone's like, yeah, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for being good. It's a metaphor for being kind. No, how come how come you guys can make this a metaphor and you can't make that? All right, how do you determine what's practical? I'm sorry. Scholars. Okay, good. The scholars obviously they didn't just like. Do you think they like just pick and choose? No, there has to be some kind of, there has to be a system in place for them to help decide that. So what science would I use or study to help me extract and determine when the Prophet is speaking metaphorically and when he's speaking actually? Huh? A hadith? Okay, maybe, that's one, for sure. What else? Usul fiqh, right? So when you talk about legal theory that it tells you, okay, how do you utilize certain terms when the Prophet ﷺ speaks in a certain way, when he addresses people like this, how is that supposed to be understood and how do you benefit from that? So these are 2 ways, and yes, context is really important, yes. Usul fiqh. Fiqh is the rulings. Usul is how to extract those rulings, right? So that legal theories on how to extract and how to deal with those rulings. But context, like you said, is very important. And how do you deal with that? Like, there is a legal framework in place in order to help us understand a hadith, in order to help us understand ayat and how to deal with them. But here, like I had mentioned, like I had said, for us sometimes it becomes pretty clear, right? Like you said, it's like, okay, well, you can look at it and sometimes you can tell. Sometimes, like most of the time, I will say yes. Most of the time I'll say yes, it's very clear, you can tell. Like in this example, what is the thing that made you think it was metaphorical, or that we understand it metaphorically? Right, because we understand physically where the sun is, right? Like we have ways to monitor the sun 24 hours a day, correct? And do we see any prostration going on? right?
Sun making the prostration, that's already.
I'm sorry?
The sun making the prostration.
Right, the sun making prostration, like, do we see it moving physically under the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, like we don't see any of these things. And so if something defies physical experience, we can understand it metaphorically, right? That's one way. And are there other things that happen? Like, so for example, if all of you know about the splitting of the moon, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the Quraysh, they asked for a miracle, so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he split the moon. Is that a metaphor? No? Why? Right? Because that's something that people actually saw and something they actually experienced. So things that agree with experience and reality, does it mean that it has to be something that we can conceive? No, right? So, for example, a white animal that is like half human, half horse, and it travels like one like jump is like the movement of the blink of an eye, or the distance that one person can see, right? Those things we can't conceive, right? Like we don't know any. Do you guys, unless you guys know about vehicles, I'm not aware of, like, right? There's no vehicle that we conceive that can move at that speed, right? But do we accept that as reality? Yes, we do. Why? Because he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he experienced it, right? So anything that agrees with experience, agrees with reality, right? Those are things that we can generally take at face value. So I think that's why we look at this hadith in this way and say, okay, well, no, this actually defies experience, right? This defies what we see and what we experience and what we observe. So what is the metaphor that the Prophet, like, what is the lesson that he's trying to teach us or he's showing us here then? If we say that this is a metaphor, what is the lesson that we're supposed to take away?
Everything prostrates to Allah subhanahu wa
Right?
ta'ala.
That even objects that are inanimate, what do? Right? They acknowledge and prostrate and they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accordingly. Okay, that's one thing. What else?
That they are under the command of Allah.
That they're under the complete command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Absolutely, no doubt. So some of these specific metaphors, the fact that it goes under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's arsh, that it goes under his throne, why mention that? Right, so we understand the arsh to be one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's greatest creations. So, but why mention it in this context? Yes? I'm sorry? Right, that the great, no matter how great we view the sun to be, Allah is still greater. Good, right? So you see how it's very easy to extract some of these metaphors and understand what it is that he sallallahu alayhi wasallam is relaying and portraying for us. قال وحدثني عبد بن حميد ابن بيان الواسطي قال أخبرنا خالد يعني ابن عبد الله عن يونس عن إبراهيم التيمي عن أبيه عن أبي ذر أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال يوما. So here Abu Dhar, he mentions that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said one day أتدرون أين تذهب هذه الشمس, like, do you know where the sun goes? بإذن معنى الحديث ابن عليا. So he mentions a hadith similar to the previous one. قال وحدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة وأبو كريب ولفظ لأبي كريب قال حدثنا أبو معاوية قال حدثنا الأعمش عن إبراهيم التيمي عن أبيه عن أبي ذر قال دخلت المسجد ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم جالس. So Abu Dhar, he said, I came into the masjid and the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم was sitting. فلما غابت الشمس قال, so he said, and when the sun had set, he صلى الله عليه وسلم said, يا أبو ذر, he said, oh Abu Dhar, هل تدري أين تذهب هذه? Do you know where this goes? Yani, where did you know where the sun goes? قال قلت الله ورسوله أعلم. I said, Allah and His Messenger know best. قال فإنها تذهب فتستأذن في السجود. It says that it leaves and it goes and it seeks permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the state of sajda. فيؤذن لها, so it is then given permission. وكأنها قد قيل لها ارجعي من حيث جئت, as if it is said to the sun, return back from where you came from. فتطلع من مغربها, so that it will rise, and then at one day it will rise from its place of setting, it will rise from the west. قال ثم أقرأ في قراءة عبد الله وذلك مستقر لها. So over here it says that it was the verse is read. He says وَذَلِكَ مُسْتَقَرٌ لَهَا, and this is the path in which it takes. So over here, this is not an addition, but something that is important to be pointed out. Not only does it worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that said that it makes sajda, right? He said that it makes sajda. That addition there is, it has to do with the greatness, right? So we were talking about it being under Allah's arsh, we're talking about it making sajda, that this great creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made, even that is lesser than the greatness of Allah, and even that has to prostrate and bow to Him Azza wa Jalla. قال حدثنا أبو سعيد الأشج وإسحاق بن إبراهيم قال إسحاق قال أخبرنا وقال الأشج قال حدثنا وكيع قال حدثنا أعمش عن إبراهيم التيمي عن أبيه عن أبي ذر. So over here Abu Dhar, he says قال سألت الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم, I asked the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم عن قول الله تعالى والشمس تجري لمستقر لها. He said that I asked the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم about Allah's statement, and the sun proceeds or moves along its ordained path. قال مستقرها تحت العرش. He says that its path is underneath Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's arsh. It is under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's throne. The next hadith is a bit long, inshallah, so we'll try to break it down into sections. قال حدثني أبو طاهر أحمد بن عمر ابن عبد الله ابن عمر ابن سرح قال أخبرنا ابن وهب قال أخبرني يونس عن ابن شهاب قال حدثني عروة ابن الزبير عن عائشة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبرته. Over here you have Urwa ibn Zubair, who is Aisha's nephew. So Urwa is Asma's daughter. So Abu Bakr, he has two famous daughters. Who are they? Aisha being one and Asma being the second. So Aisha and Asma were sisters. Asma's son, she had a couple sons who were very close with Aisha. One of them was Urwa. So this is Aisha radiallahu anha's nephew. So he's narrating on his aunt, saying that Aisha told him أنها قالت, that she said كان أول ما بدأ به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من الوحي الرؤيا الصادقة في النوم. He says, she radiallahu anha said that when the revelation first started, it first started with righteous dreams or true dreams. So who's talking about the beginning of revelation here? Right. Well, the nephew's narrating from who? Aisha. Was she there? No. She wasn't there. So how is she narrating the story?
Obviously,
Right. Either one of two things. The Prophet ﷺ told her about the beginning of revelation. And what is the other possibility? I'm sorry?
Maybe from his dad, from my dad, or
Right. She might have heard it from her father, or she heard it from another companion. فكان لا يرى رؤيا إلا جاءت مثل فلق الصبح. So over here, he said, she radiallahu anha, she said that that there was a gap in the revelation. There's a gap in these dreams until one day he saw something as clear as the rising of the sun. ثم حبب إليه الخلاء. He said, so after he saw that, after this amazing dream that he saw, he started removing himself from people. He started what's a good word? He started removing himself, right? He started segregating himself and isolating himself from others. فكان يخلو بغار حراء يتحنث فيه. So over here it says that he used to seclude himself into Ghar Hira, which many of us are familiar with, and he would seclude himself and yatahannath. And tahannath he'll talk about later, but basically he would go there to worship. Why did he choose Ghar Hira? Ghar Hira, have any of you had the opportunity to climb it or see it? Yes? Okay. What is unique about Ghar Hira? Why did the Prophet ﷺ choose that spot or that place?
It wasn't easy to get, that's what I know.
Okay, it wasn't easy. It's even today. It's not like the easiest, right? It's kind of, even with the stairs, it takes like about a half hour, 40 minutes, depending on how fast you climb. But why Ghar Hira?
Isn't it like outside for
It's a little further away from it's definitely further away from the Haram. What else? There's an overview of Mecca there for sure. And did any of you actually get to go inside? It's small, right? It's not like a really big cave. What is unique, if you actually pay attention to the space, is on one side there's a gap, in the cave itself. And if you look through the gap, you can't, not anymore because of all the construction, but you had a direct line of sight to the Kaaba. So if you actually go there, because of the gap, there would be a direct line of sight to the Kaaba. So, and I believe Allah that is why He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam chose that place. Like, why didn't He just go sit around the Kaaba? I'm sorry? It's crowded. Okay, maybe because it's crowded. What else? He wanted to isolate himself for sure, right? He didn't want to be around other people, right? Which had to do with the fact that maybe it was crowded. Well, what was around the Kaaba at this time? Now remember, this is the beginning of Revelation.
That time there were idols.
They're idols, and he didn't want to be what? He didn't want to be near those idols, right? He didn't want to be in that space, so he removed himself and moved far away from it. وهو تعبد الليالي أولات العدد. So he would worship nights on end. He would go to Ghar Hira and he would go and he would worship nights on end. قبل أن يرجع إلى أهله, and before he returned to, then he would return to his family. ويتزود لذلك, and the reason he would come back is because he would prepare his food, right? He would prepare food, he would take food for a few days and he would go back and he would worship. ثم يرجع إلى خديجة فيتزود لمثلها, and he would go back to Khadija radiallahu anha, and he would also prepare food for her as well. حتى فجأه الحق وهو في غار حراء, until finally the truth came to him sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he was in the cave. فجاءه ملك, so an angel came to him. فقال اقرأ, so the angel said to him, very famous story which we're all familiar with, he said, اقرأ, read. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he responded saying, ما أنا بقارئ, I am not one who knows how to read. In another narration, it says, ما أقرأ, what should I read? In another narration, it says, what should I read? قال فأخذني فغطني حتى بلغ مني الجهد. So over here it says that he seized me in such a way and he squeezed me so hard that I felt constricted and restricted, and then he released me. ثم أرسلني فقال, so he said, then he released me and he said, اقرأ, read. قال قلت ما أنا بقارئ. So he responded again saying that I don't know how to read like that. قال فأخذني فغطني الثانية حتى بلغ مني الجهد. So he said that he grabbed me again, he squeezed me again for a second time until I felt like I couldn't breathe anymore. ثم أرسلني, then he released me. فقال اقرأ, and he said read. فقلت ما أنا بقارئ. He said that I am not a reader, I don't know how to read. And then again, فأخذني فغطني الثالثة, so he grabbed me and he wrapped me for a third time. حتى بلغ مني الجهد, until I felt restricted and constricted. ثم أرسلني, and then he released me. فقال اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق, read in the name of your Lord that created you. خلق الإنسان من علق, that he created man from a spot or like a alaq is like a congealed blood or like a scab almost. اقرأ وربك الأكرم, read and your Lord is most noble. الذي علم بالقلم, the one who taught with the pen. علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم, that taught man what he did not know. فرجع بها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, so the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, he took these verses and he went ترجف بوادره حتى دخل على خديجة. So he went back and he was distressed, and he went back to Khadija radiallahu anha. زملوني, wrap me. فزملوه حتى ذهب عنه الروع. So she radiallahu anha, she continued wrapping him until he finally felt at ease. ثم قال لخديجة, and then he said to Khadija, أي خديجة مالي. He said, yeah, oh Khadija. He's like, what's wrong with me? He's like, there's something wrong with me. وأخبرها الخبر, and he told her what had happened. قال لقد خشيت على نفسي. He said, I fear for myself, like I'm worried. قالت له خديجة, so Khadija radiallahu anha, she said to him, كلا أبشر. She says, no, this is the glad tidings. فوالله, I swear by Allah, لا يخزيك الله أبدا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never leave you and He'll never abandon you. والله إنك لتصل الرحم. She said that I swear by Allah, you are one that keeps ties of kinship. وتصدق الحديث, and you are truthful when you speak. وتحمل الكل, وَتَكْسِبُ الْمَعْدُومِ is like, and you help others and you care for others. وَتَقْرِئَ الضَّيْفِ and you take care of you honor the guest when they come to the home. وَتُعِينُ عَلَى نَوَائِبِ الْحَقِّ and you help all of those who want the truth and who strive for it. فانطلقت به خديجة حتى أتت به ورقة ibn Nawfal. So she took him to her cousin ورقة ibn Nawfal ibn Asad ibn Abdul Uzza, and which is his name. وهو ابن عم خديجة, and he was Khadija's first cousin. She was Khadija's first cousin on her father's side, paternal first cousin. أخي أبيها, her father's brother. وكان امرأ تنصر في الجاهلية, that he was an individual who accepted Christianity during this era of Jahiliyyah. وكان يكتب الكتاب العربي ويكتب من الإنجيل. So he used to write the book and he used to write the Torah or the Injil in Arabic, and he used to translate it. ويكتب من الإنجيل, he used to write from the Gospel بالعربية ما شاء الله أن يكتب, that he used to write it in Arabic, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had willed for him to translate or to write. وكان شيخا كبيرا قد عمي. So, and he was an old man that had gone blind. فقالت له خديجة, so Khadija رضي الله عنها, she said to him, أي عم, she said, oh my uncle, اسمع, and اسمع من ابن أخيك, she said, listen to the son of your brother. قال ورقة ابن نوفل, so Waraqah ibn Nawfal, he said, يا ابن أخي, he said, oh the son of my brother, ماذا ترى, what is it that you saw? فأخبره رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, so the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم told him خبر ما رأى, and he told him what he saw. فقال له ورقة, so Waraqah said to him, هذا الناموس الذي أنزل على موسى. He said, and that this namus is a term that is used basically for a confidant. So this confidant that came to you, yani this angel that came to you, also descended upon Musa alayhi salam. Ya laytani fiha jad'an. He says, I wish that I was a young man.
I would help you.
Right? I wish that I was a young man. Ya laytani akunu hayyan hatta yukhrijuka qawmak. He says, and I hope to be alive until your people exile you and kick you out. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, so the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, أو مخرجيه, is it they'll kick me out? قال ورقة نعم, he said yes. لم يأتي رجل قط بما جئت به إلا عوديا. He says that a person has not come similar to what you have received, except that they were harmed in some way. وإن يدركني يومك أنصرك نصرا مؤزرا. And he says, and if I'm there, then I will be the one to help and fight beside you. So inshallah, we'll stop here at 7:25, but we'll break the story down piece by piece, inshallah, ta'ala, next week. Wallahu a'lam, sallallahu ala khayri khalqin, nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Inshallah, the tazkiyah class will be after Salat al-Isha.